Is the Duchess of York Epstein's scandal about to hit her in the pocket? Well, maybe. Let me explain why. The charities linked to Sarah Ferguson on Monday certainly moved quickly to distance themselves from her.
She was never the fairy tale duchess the palace wanted. Sarah Ferguson burst into royal life with laughter, charm, and a hint of chaos, and left it in scandal, disgrace, and exile. Now, as the former Duchess of York faces a new chapter without the man she once called her best friend, old stories are surfacing again, stories of betrayal, loneliness, and one American man who would change everything. Before the infamous photographs, before the exile, and long before her so-called redemption, there was another affair. One that began while she was still pregnant with Princess Eugenie. This is the story of a woman who never quite fit in and became one of the most scandalous figures in modern royal history. When Sarah Ferguson married Prince Andrew on July 23, 1986, many saw it less as a fairy tale romance and more as royal damage control.
The happiest divorced couple, as they describe themselves. She describes herself as being divorced to rather than divorced from him. I've heard her say on multiple occasions what a kind man he is, what a good father, what a good grandfather. But I think what's controversial in these comments is what she says about him being able to come out of the spotlight and get on with his life.
Charles and Diana's marriage was already falling apart, and the palace needed a distraction, someone young, vibrant, and camera-friendly. Enter Fergie, loud, spontaneous, and unapologetically unroyal. The press adored her at first. The courtiers didn't. Almost immediately, tension brewed behind palace walls. Her jokes were too casual, her style too bold, and her hunger for attention far too much for an institution built on silence and restraint. Still, she threw herself into the role, the modern, cheerful duchess. She and Andrew welcomed Princess Beatrice in 1988, and 2 years later, Princess Eugenie. But behind the smiles, the marriage was already cracking. Andrew's naval career kept him away most of the year, while Sarah was left behind, forbidden by Prince Philip from joining him on his postings. As she later confessed, "I married the man, but what I got was the palace."
Ready to go skiing? Well, I would say that would be understatement. Yeah, very so. So, anyway, you're all going to leave us alone then today, now? Please?
By her own admission, she saw her husband for barely 40 days a year, and in those long, empty months, the loneliness began to consume her. The palace expected Sarah to be the perfect officer's wife, quiet, obedient, invisible. But that was never who she was. In 1989, during a trip to the United States for the Houston Grand Opera's British Festival, everything changed. There she met Steve Wyatt, a confident, charming Texan businessman whose warmth and attention cut through the loneliness she'd been hiding. He didn't bow to her royal title. He saw her. As one biographer put it, he was attentive, affectionate, and exactly what she needed at that moment. Their chemistry was instant, and according to many, it soon turned romantic, even as she carried her second child, Princess Eugenie.
A patron for charities that are helping children, and this patron is openly friends with a known paedophile, and she knew he was a paedophile by that point. Makes me want to vomit.
I mean, there are certain things you can recover from, JJ, right? We had a prince that was involved in tampon.
For a woman who felt abandoned by her husband, this wasn't just temptation, it was escape. By the early 1990s, whispers of Sarah's relationship with Steve Wyatt were already circulating through Fleet Street. He was seen at royal-adjacent events, quietly flown to London under discreet arrangements. But everything unraveled in January 1992, when photos of Wyatt with a toddler-aged Princess Beatrice hit the tabloids. The message was unmistakable. Sarah Ferguson had introduced her daughter to her lover. For the palace, that crossed every line imaginable. Biographer David Lee would later write that Steve Wyatt was the love of her life, and that their affair was the true reason her marriage finally collapsed.
Barrels for me.
Toe sucking. Who was this and just why?
It's 1992. Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, and Prince Andrew had been divorced for a few months, and Fergie rents a place in the south of France as she took her financial advisor, John Bryan.
Years later, friends would say Sarah never truly got over him. But just 2 months after those photos made headlines, Sarah and Andrew announced their separation. It could have ended there quiet, civil, contained. Instead, the summer of 1992 delivered an even greater scandal. While vacationing in the south of France, the Duchess was photographed topless beside another American man, her financial advisor, John Bryan, as he kissed and sucked her toes by the pool. The images were splashed across the front pages of newspapers worldwide. The royal family was humiliated. The Queen was said to be devastated. Prince Philip reportedly wrote to Sarah, "You have done more to bring shame on this family than could ever have been imagined." The damage was irreversible. By 1993, Sarah Ferguson wasn't just disgraced. She was a national punchline and an international embarrassment.
After on Sunday we saw that email she'd sent to convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, which appeared to be a grovelling apology to him. She said she had to write it because she was being threatened by Jeffrey Epstein.
After Prince, Andrew's catastrophic connection to Jeffrey Epstein and his removal from royal duties and titles, his long domestic coexistence with Sarah Ferguson at Royal Lodge has reportedly reached its end. After nearly 2 decades under the same roof, the pair are said to be going their separate ways at last. For Sarah, this marks the quiet conclusion of one of the strangest royal arrangements in modern history, a story that began in glamour, spiraled into scandal, and somehow ended in uneasy survival. Sarah Ferguson has always been a contradiction. At times, she's the monarchy's comic relief, clumsy, emotional, and impossible to manage. At others, she's the cautionary tale, the woman who proved that charisma without control can destroy you. She chased attention when she shouldn't. She trusted people she shouldn't. And in a world where every misstep becomes a headline, she handed her critics endless ammunition. But perhaps what made her downfall so compelling is that she never tried to hide it.
Not only that, but a pap found them and took photos of Brian sucking Fergie's toes, Fergie topless, and all of this happening while her 2 daughters, Princess Beatrice and Eugenie, were around. It was an absolute...
She was chaotic, and she was unapologetically unroyal. Sarah once said she married into a cage of gold, and when the doors finally opened, she no longer knew how to be free. Every attempt at independence business deals, book contracts, friendships seemed to end in disaster. She was mocked by tabloids, dismissed by courtiers, and ridiculed on late-night television. Yet somehow she endured. Decades later, she continued to trade on her royal status writing books, giving speeches, chasing new ventures. But the truth is, the affair, the humiliation, and the exile remain the defining chapters of her story. And they were only the beginning. Today, Sarah Ferguson is something rare, a royal exile who refuses to disappear. She still calls herself a supporter.
They are extremely damaging, and there'll be many who think, well, who are you to say? You should just be allowed to get on with your life.
But also the question is, what kind of life is he or does she envisage his getting on with? Because obviously he can't get on with life as a member of the royal family and a working royal.
Supporter of the monarchy. She still speaks warmly of the late Queen and fiercely of her daughters. But history has already made up its mind. Her name is a reminder of what happens when emotion collides with institution, when personal weakness becomes public spectacle. Her affair with Steve Wyatt didn't just destroy her marriage. It defined her character, revealing a woman who could deceive, deflect, and act without consequence simply because she could. To the palace, she'll always be the Duchess who embarrassed them. To the public, she's the woman who couldn't stop talking and couldn't stop falling apart. Decades later, her reputation has barely recovered. Her name continues to surface alongside questionable ventures, dubious associates, and reckless financial choices, from her role as brand ambassador for a failed Bitcoin firm accused of misleading investors to countless reports of money troubles and desperate publicity stunts. Controversy has remained her constant companion. And now, insiders claim the former Duchess is quietly preparing to leave the UK, perhaps to escape the scrutiny that follows both her and Prince Andrew. Talk of luxury properties abroad and new business ventures overseas only fuels the speculation that Sarah is planning yet another reinvention this time, far from Windsor's watchful eyes. But if history tells us anything, it's that Sarah Ferguson doesn't escape scandal, she carries it with her. For years, she's blamed loneliness, the press, and royal pressure for her downfall. But at some point, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Time and again, she's chosen attention over discretion, risk over reason, and short-term gain over long-term respectability. Whatever sympathy she once inspired has long evaporated. Even within royal circles, few now see her as the great survivor she claims to be. So, what do you think? Is Sarah Ferguson simply unlucky, or is she the architect of her own repeated disgrace? Should she finally walk away from the UK, or is this just another act in a decades-long performance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more royal exposés that pull back the curtain on Britain's most controversial family.